Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 118 of Petey's Awesome Guest Panel. And tonight we have a very iconic, legendary name in the world of Hollywood, in the world of TV. But before we introduce this gentleman tonight, I want to introduce tonight's co-host for this evening and my dear friends. First off, Christopher Petey.
Hey, yo.
I love that catchphrase, man. And of course, joining us tonight, another one of my dear friends, longtime friends, Mr. Darius Gibbons.
Hey, everybody. How's everybody doing today?
Hey.
Good to have you on, Dare. And to introduce tonight's guest star, let me just say he's an iconic man who was part of history, history and television. You may know this gentleman's work as Eddie Munster from the 1960s, the Munster. And of course, I've been a fan of this man for a very long time. My guest at this time is Mr. Butch Patrick. Butch, welcome, sir. How are you today?
The energy's coming through.
Oh, there's lots of
I'm well. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, it's such an honor and pleasure to interview such an iconic name like yourself, sir.
Well, it's I was very lucky as a kid. I grew up in a really cool time, and I worked from 1960 to 1974, which was a really great window for music, entertainment, movies, and television. So I've been very blessed.
Awesome. And before we get into the questions, I just want to say that my fiance, my father-in-law is a huge fan. My dad is a huge fan. They grew up watching you. They just love the Munsters.
Yeah, the Munsters is a very it's a unique, one-of-a-kind TV show that occurred in the mid '60s, the last 2 years of black and white, and it brought in the best of several things: the Universal Monsters, the writers of Leave It to Beaver, and just the '60s in general was a great time for comedic fodder in television.
Totally agree. And now, usually I ask the first question, but I'm gonna let Darius ask the first question. So go ahead, Dare.
Oh, yes. Thank you. My first question is really, how did you really get started in just acting in general? What kind of set it off and just set it all in motion?
Take us there.
I've had a very interesting life, and this was all accidental. Literally, nobody set out to be an actor. It was happenstance situation, which even makes it more unique and wonderful. The story goes, not really a story, the facts are this. My little sister was very, very, very cute, and a woman in Hollywood was opening up the world's first child-only talent agency. Her name was Mary Grady. Her son was Robbie on My Three Sons. His name was Don Grady. That was the only attachment that she had to anybody in the business, and she decided she was working for an adult agency, and she thought a kid agency would be a good, unique way to be, to start one up there was a need for it. So they took my little sister up for a photo shoot that I accompanied her on. When they were done with her pictures, the gentleman's name was Amos Carr, and he was the go-to kid photographer in Hollywood. And he looked at me and he goes, "He's got a good look. Do you mind if I take a couple pictures of him?" And my mom said, "No, of course not." So about 3 months later, the picture that he had taken of me, he had put in his window, which happened to be on Hollywood Boulevard. And a producer and a director were walking by, and they were casting a movie, and they still hadn't found the youngest son of Jane Wyatt and Eddie Albert, and the younger brother of Brenda Lee. So this little B movie for 20th Century Fox was going into production, and they liked my look, and they said, "You know where we can find him?" And they sought me out, and I went on an interview. I never thought about acting, and my mom talked to Mary, and Mary said, they'd like to see Butch. My mom asked me, "Would you like to go on an interview for a movie?" I go, "Yeah, sure." So I went up on it, and I got the part. They basically hired me, no experience, and that's how I started.
Incredible story.
Total accidental.
And were you gonna say that there?
No, I was going to say the best things in life usually are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I never wanted to be an actor. It came naturally to me. I was good at it. It was temporary work for me. I always wanted to be a race car driver. I never had any ambitions of staying in the business for any length of time. So I worked for about 14 years, and I worked a lot. I was very lucky to have latched onto a lot of good shows and several series, and worked with some really good people. But it was always temporary.
I see it. Bless you for that. And before I ask my question, I just want to say too, you talked about the '60s being a time, definitely a great time. This was a time when Ron Howard was on the Andy Griffith Show. You had Billy Mumy on Twilight Zone, and of course Butch Patrick on the Munsters.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of as much production as you're used to nowadays. There was 3 channels. Content was, TV sets went off at midnight. They came back on in the morning. It was a whole different world. But there were about, there were a few kids working a lot. I wouldn't consider myself a really, I didn't do nearly as much work as Bill Mooney or some others, but I did a fair amount of work. And I was never, my mom never forced me to go to an interview. She would come up and ask me, would you like to go on an interview? And if I was busy doing something else, whether it be football or riding my mini bike or whatever, I would usually say no. I probably could have worked more, but like I say, it was not something that I was destined to do. So I took it very lightly, seriously when I was working, but not serious to the point where I wanted to do it all the time.
Oh, I see. And of course, I want to get your memories too of your audition for the Munsters and working with the cast, which was Al Lewis, Fred Gwynn, and of course Yvonne De Carlo.
Yeah, great act. A great lineup. It was magic. Literally, it was a combination of several things: the Universal Monsters, the like I said, the Leave It to Beaver producers, the special effects people, the Westmores doing the makeup. Great writing. It was sort of a perfect storm came together, especially with the talent with Yvonne De Carlo, Al, and Fred coming from Car 54. I was just lucky enough I wasn't even living in Hollywood. They had already cast it with somebody else. They offered it to Bill Mooney. He turned it down. They hired Happy Durman for the pilot. During the screening to the networks, the execs said, we're going to go ahead with the show, but we need you to replace Joan Marshall and Happy Durman with Yvonne De Carlo and somebody else. And then my agent caught wind of that, and she reached out to them and said, you need to fly this kid in, Butch Patrick. She showed him I just finished a year of The Real McCoys the last year, and I did like 8 episodes for him. And then she showed him some of those episodes, and they said, okay, we'll fly him in. And I tested again. It was like really, happenstance or kismet or whatever you want to call it. And I got the part. And for the next 2 years, and it only lasted 2 years, but it's been with me, let's say it'll be 60 years next year. So that's how long I've been associated with Eddie Munster.
God bless you for that. And you absolutely nailed the role as Eddie Munster.
I was very lucky. Most of the time when I went on interviews, I was lucky enough to just be myself. I would memorize the lines and go into it. I kind of had a little bit of a devil may care attitude, because I didn't really care if I got the part or not. I was happy to just give it a shot, go home, and whatever happens, happens. I wasn't, wrapped up in the whole the ego thing. And I think that worked in my advantage on a lot of parts. And I did. I just treated it like I would treat myself. The good thing was, if it wasn't what they were looking for, the trick to acting is you have to tweak it to what the director wants. And I could do that as well. So.
And you were very good at it.
Thank you.
No problem, sir. Chris, you got a question?
In and outside the Munsters, are there any specific actors, directors, or co-stars you've enjoyed collaborating with during your career?
On the Munsters?
Yeah. In and outside the Munsters.
Oh, sure, yeah. On the Munsters, there was a director I liked a lot named Joe Pevney, and he had done, later on you'll see his name associated with Star Trek and stuff. Robert Totten, I did some Disney work with him, and he did a lot of Gunsmokes. I'd done a few Gunsmokes with him. I really enjoyed working with him. The directors, when I did Lidsville, Tony Sharmely and Sid and Marty Krofft were fun to work with. That was a summer of '71. That was kind of my last big part when I was kind of phasing out, because I told myself when I turned 18 I would get out of the business, and that was the summer that I turned 18. Chuck Jones was fabulous. I worked with Chuck Jones on the Phantom Toll Booth. Super duper guy. And on My Three Sons, I did 9 episodes of My Three Sons, and Freddie DeCordova was the director there, and he directed The Tonight Show. So I was around some very talented people doing some really good things. And I got, I did a movie for Hall Bartlett in Brazil for 3 months, and I was very close to Hall, and he was a great director. So I was lucky enough to work with some really good people.
That's incredible. And
Go for it. Very nice.
yes.
John Cassavetes. I did a movie with John Cassavetes with Burt Lancaster and Judy Garland. That was, that was only about 8 years old, but I do remember that, everybody was very much in awe of this movie being made, because it was, like you say, you got Judy Garland and Burt Lancaster and John Cassavetes,
Yeah, definitely an awesome career.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
There, you had a question?
Oh, yes. Well, I was basically going to ask, who out of all your acting, who is like the favorite person that you liked and enjoyed working with?
The most excited I ever got, and I never really got excited for anything. I just would go up on my interview, and hopefully, if I got it, I got it. But when I was in the 8th grade, the lead up to the story, the Beatles came on the lot on the Munsters when we were doing the Munsters, and I wasn't there that day for some reason. I missed meeting the Beatles, and I was just, oh my god, I missed the Beatles. This was huge. You know, they just had hit America, and it was there. I mean, it was like over the top huge. So a couple years later, in the 8th grade, I'm back in school. I went up on an interview to do a Monkees episode. And at that time, the Monkees were as big as the Beatles. They had a TV show. The Beatles didn't have a TV show. It was Monkey Mania all over. And I wound up getting hired to do their Christmas episode. And I worked for a whole week. This little 14-year-old kid in the 8th grade, 13, 14, whatever I was, worked with the Monkees, and as an equal, became very good friends with them all, and spent a week doing a very good episode, which I think is some of my best work, and probably the best episode they ever did. If you get a chance to see it, obviously it's on every Christmas. That was a big week. And then the 2 years that I worked with Chuck Jones doing the Phantom Toll Booth was another big one, because I was working with all the voiceover cartoon people, the voiceover people, that the cartoons that I watched that Chuck Jones was associated with. He brought in all the Mel Blanc, Dawes Butler, June Foray, Hans Conried, all the voiceover people I worked with for a couple of years, and that was pretty amazing.
Incredible. And that was my next question too. I was going to ask, if when you said Chuck Jones, I was going to say the legendary animator Chuck Jones.
That's the one. The only feature film he ever did was the MGM movie called The Phantom Toll Booth, which was based on Norman Juster's wonderful book.
Oh, okay. And now we like to have a little fun on the show, and I'm going to ask you a silly rhetorical question. You don't have to answer this, of course, but it's going to lead to my next question.
Okay.
And that is, if your mother was a vampire and your father was a Frankenstein, how come you were a werewolf? And you don't have to answer this question.
Creative license in Hollywood. They do it all the
time. It actually leads to my next question, because we loved your role on The Simpsons on the episode 8 Misbehaving, where Apu gives his kids his octuplets to the zoo. And of course, Gary Marshall was in this episode as well. So I would just want to get your memories on your cameo appearance on The Simpsons.
As Mr. Kidkill.
Yes.
That's the name. You know, I was very excited about doing The Simpsons when The Simpsons first came out in I think it was 88 or 89. I was watching it religiously, and I said, man, I saw the guest stars at the end of the thing. I go, I would really like to be a guest voice on The Simpsons, because they're going to have a hell of a rap party someday. You know, they got Mick Jagger and George Harrison and Paul McCartney. Well, lo and behold, the joke's on me. I did season 11, and they're in their 34th season now. There's that rap party is going to have a bunch of dead people.
Yeah, and
so when I went out to do it, I was very excited, and the kind of like the downside of it was, I walk into the studio, and there's like 14 microphones in a huge semicircle, and I'm the only person there. So I went in and did all my voiceovers by myself.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But it was cool to be part of it.
Absolutely, and I can still remember some of your lines from that episode, especially the ending where you and Homer actually are riding on that little bike.
Yeah, don't break character. Whoa. It's like, how do you know? It's like totally improvising. He's like, you're on a unicycle, you're losing your balance. I go, seriously? Okay, well, but I'm very happy to have been part of The Simpsons.
Oh, it was one of my favorite episodes, especially when you appear in Apu's bedroom and you notarize something. You're like, hey, I'm a notary. I got that going too.
I got that going for me too. Yeah, a little tongue-in-cheek insult.
I loved, you know, as like you, I was a longtime fan of The Simpsons since day one, and I just can't believe they're on 34th season. That episode felt like just yesterday. I remember it aired November '99. That's how I remember. It was actually a week after Thanksgiving, I believe.
It was the octuplets thing, and then the Octomom came along as well.
Yeah,
the real Octomom.
Wasn't that something?
The real Octomom.
Oh man, that was a great episode. Chris, I believe it was your turn. Your next question.
Can you tell us about any specific roles or characters that have been particularly memorable or challenging for you?
What about that?
Can you tell us about any specific roles or characters that have been particularly memorable or challenging for you?
Oh, memorable. Well, you know, a couple of interesting things. I did 9 episodes of My Three Sons. That's the most guest episodes any male ever did on the show. Meredith McRae did 11 as a woman. So I did a lot of My Three Sons. As I said, I was friends with Don Grady, his mom. I lived with them actually for a time when my mom was back east. The one summer I did 2 Disney World of Colors. One Michael O'Hurley, he directed 2 two-parters in the same summer, which was pretty unusual because at that time in '68, the Disney's World of Color was kind of like the sign-off TV show for the weekend for everybody. Back when there was only 3 channels, everybody would get around and watch Walt Disney's World of Color. So to be on for 4 weeks one summer on Disney, that was quite a feather in my cap. And it was also the same time I did the Phantom Toll Booth and the Monkeys Christmas show that summer. So that was good. The little people on Lidsville, when I was doing Lidsville for Sid and Marty Krofft, I had worked with all the little people in Hollywood because they were your stand-ins when you're a kid. They don't use another kid to stand in for you. They hire, well, back then midgets or dwarfs or whatever, but little people. So when I did Lidsville, we had like 24 little people on the set. They were all in the hats. And I knew almost all of them. And it was a really cool summer because I had never met Charles Nelson Riley and I never met Billy Hayes. And I had never met Sharon Baird. She was a Mouseketeer. So that was fun. That was an interesting thing to do. And I got to know the Crofts, and they were like owning Saturday morning television with the Pup and Stuff, Bugaloos, Land of the Lost, Lidsville segment, and so on and so on. The aforementioned producer Hall Bartlett, when I went to Brazil and did the movie the Sandpit Generals, he was probably got the best work out of me. And if the movie ever come out, it was destined to probably get a couple Academy Awards. I would have been up for a Best Supporting Actor role. But unfortunately they had a big Hollywood divorce, and Rhonda Fleming, who he was married to, got half the rights to the movie, and they had such a bitter divorce that he shelved the movie before he would let her make a penny. So the people that really lost out on that were, other than Hall, of course, were the actors who were in it that would have really sent them into the stratosphere. So instead of becoming a movie star, I wound up doing Saturday morning television, which even led me to get out of Hollywood even more.
Yeah.
Oh. And
no business like show business.
Yeah,
Nope.
and I'll tell you a funny story too. Like, everybody's got the part that got away. Did you ever turn down a part? Well, I was at the beach surfing. I'm about 18 years old, and this guy, unknown to me who he was, but his name was George Lucas. Unknown George Lucas comes up to me and says, "Hey, I'm doing this movie up in the Central California about the 1962 and all the kids in '62, but you're gonna have to cut your hair." I go, "There's no way I'm cutting my hair. I had hair like Robert Plant down to here." So I said, "Good luck with your little movie." And about 2 years later, I saw American Graffiti, and that was the movie that I turned down the role of Richard Dreyfuss's part, a sight unseen. And when I saw the movie, I went, "Oh boy, let me just pull my head out of my ass right now for giving that part up." And that was one that. But who knew who George Lucas was?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Butch, I also Darius, before you ask your next question, I just gotta say 2 things to Butch, that I just realized something too. Like going back to the Simpsons though, like a week after they aired your episode, another child star actor, Jay North from Dennis the Menace, actually appeared on the Simpsons.
Oh, Jay's a good buddy of mine. I didn't know that he had done one.
Yeah, he actually appeared in the episode, ironically, after yours.
Really? Oh,
Yeah,
cool.
it was called it was a biker episode, so I think the title was called "Take My Wife Sleaze" because it was a biker gang.
Jay's.
Oh, I remember that one.
Yeah,
I mean, Jay was like,
Correct.
he worked. I mean, he was like, when you're the star of the show and you're in every scene, that's tough. I can really sympathize with Jay, because he had a little bit of a difficult issue in Hollywood. He became a little, resentful, and had some problems with how Hollywood treated him. He felt very bad about it.
I understand. And did you know that they were going to use the Eddie Munster outfit on you for The Simpsons? Was that your idea, or was that their idea?
That wasn't my idea, but I knew that they would. That was the joke, because hey, there's TV star, there's child actor Butch Patrick. Yeah, I'm in the TV, and it didn't affect me one bit, because I'm standing there in my outfit, and Apu goes, "Yes, I can see that." I don't care what Butch Patrick says. We're not putting our children in television. But, so yeah, I knew that it would be the joke would be me walking around looking like Ben Stiller on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah. And you know, I'll say this, and I'm sorry, Dad, but I just want to say
No problem.
that a year after that episode aired, your episode aired, The Simpsons actually paid tribute to the Munsters in their Halloween opening.
Yes, they did.
You
Yes,
saw
they
that?
did. They also did that. They also used the Munster coach and me. I didn't have a voice in it, but they used my character in the backseat of the Munster coach in another episode. So there was like 3 references to the Munsters.
Incredible.
Yeah,
Darius,
that actually remind me of like this one question that was imposed on that 70s show where Red asks like, why doesn't like the entire town just band together to and take them all down? And Fez was like, I think they're saving that for like a series finale episode.
Well, you know, it's funny. The Munsters has been referenced in so many. The Lost. Ever seen the movie The Lost Boys?
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The attack of Eddie Munster from the Littlest Vampire, and then they also got in their lair. They got Munster Go Home poster on the wall. It's if you ever get a chance to see the Lost Boys, it's they make reference to it and homage to it. Roseanne, they when DJ ran off, she was on the phone. She goes, "Just look for a kid driving a car that looks like Eddie Munster." You know, it just goes on and on.
Darius,
I also remember that Howard Stern, back when he was on terrestrial radio, would talk about the Munsters often, saying that he saw like every single episode ever made.
Yeah,
and he was apparently a huge ass fan.
I was on Howard a couple times with Al Lewis, and that was sort of an intimidating situation because I, really was listening to him. I go, yeah, this guy's like really rough on people, but it was all an act. He's a very nice guy, and then also the other thing was like him and Rob Zombie, Rob and Howard would get into these Munster trivia questions and contests and stuff together, and then here Rob wound up doing the remake of the movie.
Incredible.
Oh wow.
Darius, your question?
My question I'm gonna ask is what is like some of the most funnest things that happen backstage behind the scenes?
Not a whole lot really went on. At least probably the funniest stuff probably happened late on Friday nights after I was gone, because they would work Friday nights sometimes till midnight, 1 o'clock to get things, you had to finish up by the end of the week. Fred was a little bit of a prankster. I guess the one thing that I remember, we were all supposed to get in the Munster coach and drive away from the front of the house. It was late in the afternoon and the sun was starting to set. So it was very important for Zimmy, the assistant director, told Fred, he goes, now just go down to the other street, turn around and come back because we may have to do it again and we're losing our son, so the thing you never tell Fred to do is if you tell him to do something, he's like a big kid, he's going to do the opposite. So what happened was we drove down to the end of the street, but instead of turning around, he turned left and went all the way out the front gate of Universal on the Lankershim Boulevard and went for a little unauthorized joyride in the Munster coach. We were gone about 15 minutes, but the key is you should have seen the people on the street, seeing the Munsters, the full family in the Munster coach driving down the street without anybody else around. It was like pretty amazing.
I always wanted to ride in that car.
Yeah, well, I've got a Dragula, I've got a Munster coach, I got an Eddie Chopper. I do a lot of automotive stuff with the cars. I'm a car guy. George Barris and I were very good friends.
Oh, and I also want to say too, like you mentioned Rob Zombie though, in his movie House of a Thousand Corpses, he actually includes a scene from the Munsters where it was Grandpa Munster was in the car. I think it was a racing episode.
Well, he loves the Munsters, that's for no doubt.
Yeah, and I can understand why. I mean, it was definitely a totally awesome show.
Well, lately I've been getting a lot of scripts mailed to me and people reaching out, writing me, little cameos in their little indie movies and stuff. I did 3 this year, and it's actually very, it's very touching that people think enough of the show and it inspired them to get into filmmaking or whatever. And the main reason I never really wanted to be an actor for any length of time was I hated the interview process. I thought, how much work do you have to do before you start getting scripts mailed to you and you get past the point of proving yourself over and over and over? And it never happened. So that was one of the reasons why I didn't really mind leaving the business, because I figured I was always going to be a kid actor and you're always going to be proving yourself no matter how old you got. You'll be a kid actor to these people. But now when people send you a script and you say, oh, this is not too bad and the content's okay and the money's not bad and it's easy to do. I've done probably over the last 5 years, I've probably done 15 little independent movies. I mean, nothing spectacular, but just fun stuff to do. And it's nice because you're sort of playing it forward for people that think enough of the show to write you into the script.
Oh, I get it. And you mentioned I gotta ask you too, Butch, like you worked on so many production companies, and this is a fun question I love to ask all my guest stars. Whenever I'm not on a strict military-like diet where I am like literally fasting until dinner time, I am an absolute foodie. And you worked, like I said, you worked on so many production companies. I was just curious to know what the catering scene was like on the Munsters, and what was your favorite meal in catering?
Oh, the craft services is nothing like it was. Now it's amazing. Back then it was like roach coach food. You'd go to the commissary and eat just regular. Disney had the best commissary. They had the best food, but most commissaries were just basically like a Golden Corral type of thing. Nothing spectacular. But today, craft services on movies and big productions, it's like 5-star chefs and stuff. It's really good. I mean, a lot of times people, if you can tell a good production from a bad production by how they feed you.
I agree.
Mhm.
Did you have a favorite meal in catering?
Back when I was a kid, not really. Spaghetti, meatballs, ham and sweet potatoes was always popular, but no, not really. Nothing really jumps out at me.
Oh, okay. We have a couple of more questions before we wrap up here. And
Sure.
Chris, any final comments or questions for Butch?
Well, apart from the Munsters, what would you say are some of your favorite projects that you've worked on? Like maybe a top 3?
My top 3 shows that I worked on other than the Munsters.
Yeah.
Okay. I mentioned 2 of them, which was the Monkeys and the Phantom Toll Booth. But put those 2 aside, I'll come up with 3 more. I very much let me see. I did a couple Adam 12s. It was fun working with those guys. I did a Marcus Welby pilot, and it was interesting thing about that pilot was it was the week that they landed on the moon, June '69. And it was a very interesting week because right after that, my birthday was August 2nd. And then right after that, I got my license on my birthday. And then right after that, Charlie Manson was running amok. So it was a very crazy summer of '69. But Marcus Welby, Robert Young, super nice guy. It was the only time I ever got a thank you note from any celebrity. He actually took the time to write a thank you note and mailed it to me. That was good. I really like working on the Real McCoys. Richard Crenna, I was a big fan of Richard Crenna. He was on an old TV series from the '50s called Our Miss Brooks with Eve Arden, which I enjoyed watching. And then when he was Luke McCoy and Walter Brennan, my mom, told me who Walter Brennan was. And then I did a movie called Showdown with Audie Murphy. And Audie Murphy was the most decorated war veteran in World War II. He won. And they made a movie about him from To Hell and Back. And I worked with Audie Murphy, but I enjoyed working on westerns because I could ride a horse. So I did a couple Gunsmokes. I worked with Clint Eastwood in Rawhide way before he was really famous. He was just Rowdy Yates. But I love doing westerns. You got to be outside. You could be dirty. You wore, Levi's and cowboy hats, and usually there was a chance to ride a horse. So that was a lot of fun.
You just nail any role that you do. You're such a charismatic actor.
Absolutely.
Well, like I said, I was just lucky. I was easy around adults. I wasn't intimidated. I was pretty good study. I knew my lines. I came prepared, and looked younger and I acted older, which is the magic formula in Hollywood for kids. If you can play younger and you can mentally be older, you'll work.
Oh, okay. And Darius, you had any final comment or question for Butch?
Oh, I just want to say just thank you just for the privilege of being able to talk and just hear about your career. I think it's just awesome. Thank you so much.
Oh, dar, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Butch, I have to ask before I ask my final question. I'm gonna have a preliminary question. We would love to have you back on for a future episode. Will that be possible in the future for part 2?
Yes, absolutely. No problem.
Because we just love talking to you, and we're huge Munster fans.
No,
Absolutely.
it's my pleasure. I got a lot of fun stuff coming up next year, the 60th anniversary of the show. I'm going to be on the road doing some more stuff. We're actually I'm having a guy build a fully scaled spot stairway with a functioning spot under the stairs blowing fire for photo ops for people. Pat Priest has agreed to come out on the road with me occasionally. So we'll have Marilyn Munster. It's going to be fun.
How about this? When that 60th anniversary comes out, you could come on and you can promote it like
Yeah,
show.
absolutely.
And speaking of promoting, though, this is going to lead to my final question, though, and that is, what's next for Butch Patrick? This is the part, Butch, where my show is an open forum. You could talk, say anything you like. I am passing the proverbial microphone to you. The floor is yours, Butch.
Basically, I've got a few things booked next year. This was the first year I ever actually opened my own pavilion, which was the Munsters Mausoleum at Creepy Works here in Conway, Arkansas. I learned a lot. I built my electric chair. I built my stand-up coffin. I built the big mousetrap. I have an entire garage full of Universal Monster, characters now. Wolfman, the creature, three different Frankensteins, a Herman, an Eddie doll. I got all this stuff now that I acquired from this thing. So now I'm really looking forward to spending the time on the road, doing some high-profile theater screenings, movie screenings. There's going to be a lot going on. The easiest way for your viewers or fans to keep track is I own Munsters.com. I've had that website for over 30 years. I keep it up. Obviously, I add in my appearances and my scheduling. Also, there's new merch available and this and that. But that's the easiest way to keep track of me is Munsters.com. And I will be happy to come on for part 2. But I will be out on the road. I'm going to spend most of my time east of the Mississippi, but I do occasionally get to the West Coast. But we'll see what happens. And I only have those dates in I have 2 things in August. I have 2 things in April, and they're not listed on the site yet. They'll be listed after the first of the year.
Okay, and do you think it's possible, would you have availability for part 2 and maybe in January or February or March of next year?
Yeah, sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And
this is easy peasy. Yeah, let's just shoot for January. Sure, why not?
Awesome, because that's my birthday month, and it would be such a huge birthday gift to have you back on.
Well, figure out let's do that for your birthday. We can make that.
Sorry, I sound like a little kid. I'm sorry.
No problem. I'll send you a cake.
No, thank you. Before we conclude, I just want to say that you're going to get a copy of this interview as soon as I'm done with it, which won't take long. I literally finished it in like a day.
No problem. When is your birthday? What day?
January 25th.
January 25th. We'll get it together. January 25th. I'll send you a little Munster care package for your birthday.
Oh, bless your heart, sir. And I just want to say too, before we conclude, that you have this incredible gift, Butch, where you could take a 30-year-old fan, bring him way down here, and make him feel like that little boy watching the Munsters, watching The Simpsons again. Interviewing you is like such an honor, like for not just myself, but for Chris and Darius here, who grew up watching you like as longtime fans. And I feel like you deserve it. And we're going to conclude with this, and that is, thank you, Butch.
Thank you, Butch.
Thank you.
Thank you, Butch.
Thank you, guys. Listen, I've been very blessed. I appreciate it, and I do appreciate it. I'm a very lucky person. Look forward to seeing you in January.
Absolutely, we'll be totally honored. Have a nice night, sir. And it was such an honor speaking to you again.
Thank you, guys. Good job. Bye-bye.